Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jessica Smith and I help you simplify home education so you can work wonders in your home. I have an exciting video for you today. I'm going to start a new series or sub-series on my channel called On My Bookshelves. I've had a lot of you ask what are my favorite books in whatever topics or subjects, and I do have a lot of books. I love children's books, but most importantly, I have friends who love children's books and they share their recommendations with me all the time. So I can't say that I am the mastermind behind finding all these books. I'm not. I do have great connections, and so I'm really blessed to have that. But I thought it would be great to share all of my favorite books in different topics with you so that you can also benefit from finding amazing living books for your children and your home. Now, if you aren't sure what the term living books means, I have a whole video telling you about living books. This is a term by Charlotte Mason, and it really just means a well-written book by one author that has ideas in it that catch hold of your child's heart and mind and really makes your child fall in love with that subject. That is a very short summary of it, but I recommend watching that video where I show examples of living book and more of a dry, non-living book in the same subject. So I will link that in the description box below. So without further ado, the first topic that I'm going to talk to you about is history. What we studied in history this year was westward expansion in America. Now, I'm not going to get in the details of how we choose what time period in history. Really, the short answer is we do it in cycles, 4-year cycles. And so I'm going to explain more in a podcast episode about history, which is going to be coming this summer. So look out for that if you want to get some more details on how I choose which historical time period to study. All you need to know right now is that we did westward expansion, and these are the favorite books that we have. So the first one is a spine. Now, a spine just means a book that covers the most important points in chronological order of a time period, or it could also be a science or nature study topic. It just gives you a broad overview so that you kind of don't miss anything. And so this is our favorite. There are so many spines that you can use. I know a lot of families love This Country of Ours by H.E. Marshall, and it has been revised and updated by Donna Jean Breckenridge. I believe is how you say her name. Now, I'm going to maybe use that for my older son. I'm trying to decide because we loved this so much. My younger kids loved it too. I wasn't planning on them reading it with us, but they begged for it. My older son, who's in Form 2, he's 10 years old, this was supposed to be his spine for this time period, and he would ask to read it later on in his own time. And this is the one book that we didn't quite finish, and they asked if they could just finish it on their own. So it's by Steve Sheinkin, and you're gonna hear more about him because he does write a lot of history books. He wrote history textbooks for schools, and then he said he later repented of it and has now broken off on his own to write more interesting history books, because he would take all these little interesting stories that he would find in his research, and the publication companies just said, we can't put that in there. There's going to be too much. We just need dates and facts, or dates, names, and just facts about battles, political things. And he's like, but these are interesting. This is what's going to make kids fall in love with history. And they still said no. So he said, well, I'm going to make my own. And you know what? He did a great job because my kids have fallen in love with history. So that is Which Way to the Wild West by Steve Sheinkin. And just as a note, I have all of these books in book lists as blog posts on my website. So if you want to see these all written out, the link will be in the description box below. So another book that my son read for a biography was this landmark book of Thomas Jefferson, and is actually really short. I feel like he could have done something a little bit harder. I just didn't find a ton of good biographies that I wanted him to read for the Wild West. There are a lot of good ones out there, and I have them linked in my blog post, so you can find more. There's one about Eli Whitney. My son, for some reason, refused to read it. There was one about Kit Carson, but he wanted to read the Thomas Jefferson one. So that's what he read. So for my Form 1 boys who are 6 and 8 years old, I like to use picture books because picture books offer them highlights of that time period, great stories, and it helps them fall in love with the people, with events, and really captures their heart versus a play-by-play of events and political dealings that older kids are going to deal with a spine. Now, my boys still loved the spine, Which Way to the Wild West, so you could do both. But if you have younger children, I recommend picture books. So we started out by studying Thomas Jefferson and the Core of Discovery. Now, I don't have some of these books because we got them from the library, but don't forget that all of these are linked in the blog post, which is in the description box. So just don't forget to check that out for a complete list. We love The Journey of York, which is about the enslaved man that came with them. It's a really heartbreaking tale, but also it just brings a lot of awareness to how much the Core of Discovery depended on people other than Lewis and Clark. So there's this one, The Great Expedition of Lewis and Clark by Private Reuben Field. So it was one man who went on the expedition. It has some stories that I hadn't heard of before. There's Sacagawea. I love this biography of her. It is really beautiful and it has unique illustrations. This one, Bad River Boys, a meeting of the Lakota Sioux and Lewis and Clark. There is a book about the dog Seaman that went with them. There's a shorter book, and then there's a longer book that would be good for Form 2. It's much longer. It's like 200 pages, so that one's really good. Now, there's also some really good ones of Thomas Jefferson. Now, I know he's a controversial person in history. There are a lot of controversial people in history. We learn about them anyway. We read a lot of different accounts of controversial people so that we get different views, different sides, different stories, and then I let my children develop their own opinions of that person instead of me telling them or avoiding books about that person because they have good stories about them of their courage or bravery. So just putting my opinion out there, I read lots of different books about people and let my children form their own opinions. So again, the books about Thomas Jefferson are going to be linked. They are at the library right now. Unfortunately, I don't have them with me. Now, here are some good books on, some different Native American leaders. Now, there's a lot of them. These ones are shorter ones. This one's a little bit longer. A Boy Called Slow is a little bit shorter, but it's a good biography on Sitting Bull. So we like that one. Red Cloud's War. This one's a little bit longer, as you can see, but it's a very detailed account of what happened during the Fetterman fight. And that one's a little bit more, I guess, longer, a little bit later during that time period. So we also like to learn, like I said, we like to learn about Native American leaders, and there's a few authors that are Native Americans that do a very good job of making an accurate and fair account of what happened. So Joseph Bruchac is one, and Virginia Hawking Drive-Sneeve is one. She also wrote these books, First Americans books about the major tribes in America. And so we read these because there's also other ones that we have that we read, but these ones are really good and they help you understand more about that tribe and their history. So we read those, and they kind of overlapped with geography because we'd studied the Southwest. All right, now just on the line of minorities and making sure that there's a fair representation in our history, we also read this one for my Form 1 boys. It's called Heart and Soul, and it's a very short but very powerful and very beautifully illustrated spine, I would say, of African American history in America. So we read this one as well to add on with the other picture books we read. All right. Sequoia is a really cool book about the man who not really translated, but created a writing system for the Cherokee Indians. So this is a good biography as well, and it's really cool for the kids to kind of think of making up their own alphabet. If we didn't have an alphabet for our sounds, what would that sound like? My boys enjoyed making their own language and writing. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the railroad, and because this one is also the railroad and the Wild West. So the Pony Express, we really liked this book. They're off the story of the Pony Express. And then another fun one with the railroad is it's called Locomotive by Brian Floca. He does a beautiful job at illustrating. And he also has this in the back, which my boys like to look at. And this is also a really good illustration that they can put in their Book of Centuries for this time period. If you're not familiar with the Book of Centuries, it is simply a book with a timeline and a blank page on one side where children record dates and people, and then drawings and artifacts and things that they learn about in their history books. So let's see, where are we now? All right. So going along with Pioneers and with Going Out West, these are two books that are really good for Form 1. Dakota Dugout is really enjoyable. Just talks about farmers that went to Dakota, and there were no trees, so they had to create dugouts with grass turf and things. So then this one also it's similar. It's Dandelion, and it talks about a family going out west on a wagon train and going across the plains. And this one is one of the many that are about the gold rush, but this one is a very good summary. I would say like a good spine for that period, and it's not too long. It's a good one for this age. Coolies. This is a historical fiction book about two brothers who are working on the railroad. They're from China. It's a really good story, and my boys really enjoyed it because it's about brotherly love, and being there for each other. And then there's a lot of cowboy books that we have read. This one's called Fearless Mary. Really good book. We really enjoyed this one. She was an amazing woman, and for any person, it was just really, really good to read. Another fun one is Bad News for Outlaws. My boys were playing Marshall Sheriff after reading this one, and they were just in awe at what a strong man he was, both inside and out. Such a good person, and I was really in awe when I first read it. Now, like I said, there's a lot of books. I could keep going and going. We weren't able to read all the books on my list. There just isn't time. So I wanted to share the ones that we did read and we did like. There are others that we did read, but we're like, they were okay. And there were others we didn't get to on our list. But I want to include all of them because you may go to your library and you're only going to be able to find a few books on the Wild West or on cowboys or on pioneers or the gold rush. So I include all of them that I think are good. And then you can have that list when you go to the library and decide what you're going to read based on what's available to you. Now for literature, which is supposed to go hand in hand with history, you should read literature that was written during that time or reflects the culture, the ideas that were prevalent during the historical time period you're studying. We read American Tall Tales by Mary Pope Osborne. This was a really fun book, and the illustrations are gorgeous. They are woodcut print. I think I'm saying that right. I'm very tired. So these are just really fun illustrations. We watched a video of how this medium is done, and it really gave my boys some appreciation for the illustrations, but most of all, they loved the stories. And that is it. That is all the books that we read this year on Westward Expansion. Does not mean that those are the only books available on Westward Expansion. So don't forget to click on the link in my description box where you can see the full book list and links to Amazon. And keep a lookout for the rest of the books, Thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you are notified whenever a new video comes out. And I am going to be posting a lot more videos on our favorite books from this year, so don't forget to do that. If you're wondering how to use all of these living books to make a custom education for your family, or if you want all of these book lists for all the subjects in one place, I recommend my curriculum guides. They are the line upon line guides. There's one for Form 1 and Form 2. There are all the book lists in here, as well as a template for each subject to just fill in the books that you want to use, the ones that your children are interested in. It has how often you need to teach the subject, for how long. It gives the skills you should learn with each subject and narration prompts, everything you need to create a personalized curriculum for your child. And if you want even more hand-holding, I offer a membership through Patreon where I show you what lessons look like with each subject, as well as I provide my lesson plans that I have made for my family using these books to give you an idea of what that looks like, or even use them for your own family. I'm going to include both of those links in the description box below.